Thank you, Sanjay. Let me, on behalf of the India Energy Forum, welcome all the participants, and very particularly my good friend, Mr. Pankaj Agarwal. I was there with him some days ago, and I requested him if he could be the chief guest for today's session, and he readily responded that definitely this is an important subject. I think for the first time, we have from the state sector a government official who also headed a distribution company. And that is the time when I was at the helm of affairs in the Ministry of Power, and we used to have interactions. So we have in him, Mr. Agarwal, one who has the grassroots experience of the problems, the challenges, the complexities, the political compulsions, some of our friends say political economy of electricity distribution, and all this Pankaj has gone through. And now he is at a very important point of time when India has crossed 250 gigawatt of supply. We have close to now 450 gigawatt. Very soon that we will have 450 gigawatt of capacity. One step that we took to open up to de-license generation, and that has given us a lot of benefit over a period of last 20 years. We also opened up transmission through our policy under the Act, and that has again given a lot of benefits. I used to say those days to my friends, to my special secretary, additional secretaries, and joint secretaries, that legislation provides a framework, but we need to have Sutradhar to implement the various provisions of the Act, and that is how competitive bidding guidelines, tariff policy, and a whole range of policy came. Even Electricity Act, which fell short, and since I was there, I must say that something more perhaps could have been done to open up distribution. But whatever has been done in the Act also, we have not been able to move forward much. And it is there where some soul searching has to be done, some introspection has to be done, and it is never too late to get on. Anil just now mentioned about further looking forward of what is happening internationally, how the quality of power, harmonics, and type of things on the decentralized system of people getting power. Things are changing. Market structure all over the world is changing. Whether we have done enough, of course, India had a different problem. When we entered the century, we had more than 60% of India unelectrified households in terms of that, much more in many of the villages, many of the states. But some of the provisions that we brought, it is there where one feels a little disturbed that even the provisions that we brought, take for example, electrification, rural electrification policy provided, Anil just now said decentralization. It provided that 1 megawatt and below, generation, transmission, and distribution, everything is delicensed. It is there where Sutradhar was perhaps needed. That was not the right time because we did not have solar technology affordable. Now we have. That is one provision which holds tremendous potential of decentralized distributed generation, opening up the sector, particularly even now India has more than 65-70% in rural sector. So therefore, rural economy, so that provision does exist. And over a period of time, legislation has been interpreted even by the Supreme Court, and tariff policy, electricity policy, and rural electrification policy. Policies as provided under the Act have the same power as the Act. The provisions of the policy have similar strength, and therefore we should use that similar strength. So that is something which it is not too late. In fact, it is timely. Could we instigate this process? Could we catalyze this process? Could we ask those days I used to say that we want Hindustan Liver in Indian rural area. I know Hindustan Liver name itself is changed. And therefore, a lot of options to people. And that can be done with riding over the solar technology that is today available, and it also takes care of a number of things. We have a provision in the Act that open access should be provided. In fact, this legislation got stuck up for quite some time, for a few months, and we had to put an amendment that this open access should be having teeth into it. The earlier provision did not have teeth, in the sense that it was not made obligatory on the part of the Regulatory Commission to definitely provide open access facilitation. In spite of that, I think this has remained more or less an unimplemented provision, more or less. I mean, even critical mass is not there. Why? Because through the process of surcharge, additional surcharges, etc., it has happened. Again, there we have a teeth under our tariff policy to sort of work out with the states, in consultation with the states. We need to convince the states that it is in their interest that the sector comes out of the financial problems that every 2-3 years it has to go through, and some bailing out is required to be done. So that is one good provision. Another provision which we brought at a very late stage through the intervention of a standing committee, and that is parallel licensing, that you can have parallel licensing and provide competition. So there are provisions. I would definitely say that this act, though it fell short of opening up or short of providing a bit better changes in the structure of the electricity sector insofar as distribution is concerned. Yet, I also must say and must reiterate that a little bit of provision that were made, which could catalyze this process into becoming a better change for the distribution, a better health for the distribution sector financially, and also from the point of view of consumer services. There, we fell short in implementation, not in sort of provisions. Of course, a lot is required. I think we cannot have one size fit all for all the states. There are states, there are cities, there are towns, there are rural areas which are better looked after, better done. There are others which are not. So definitely India has complexities, India has diversities. We have southern states, there are some issues. We have northern states, there are some issues. So therefore, we have to have a menu of options. And in that menu of options, what is important is that we must make it obligatory. Take, for example, when we did the rural electrification program, this got again stuck up. 90% grant funding, and there's the time perhaps Pankaj might have been in one of the distribution company. I'm not very sure. The rural electrification program was a revolutionary program. 90% grant funded and 10% also provided by way of loan for a nominal listing from the rural electrification program. Do you know that this got stuck up? Planning Commission had a view, Finance Ministry had a view, and we had very strong Finance Minister and very strong Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission. Yet we got it. And you know on what basis we got it? When we were asked that already you are in financial mess, when you give 90% grant, it will unfold into a large volume. And how do you manage the financial thing? And the answer that our ministry gave was that we have made obligatory on the part of the states to provide franchisee arrangement. We put REC on the job, a booklet was prepared, input-based franchise. And I was surprised. I did not know for at least 2-3 years when this clause was withdrawn. By the Ministry of Power, through a cabinet decision, this provision of obligatory requirement on the part of the states to definitely get into franchisee arrangement, that was taken away from the entitlement criteria for the grant funding. So I think these are some of the things which did exist, but of course, this is past. We should look forward. I had a very pleasant discussion some days ago with Pankaj in his office, and he is very keen and he has the background. And we converged on this that we will have to have menu of options. Definitely, there are silver linings. There are towns and adjoining areas which are doing very well, even not in all states, but many states. One thing is definite, that whatever opening up we do in next 4, 5, 10 years, we don't see that the entire distribution is privatized or in a different arrangement. Nor is it so in case of generation, nor it is so in case of transmission. What is important is that we should cross the critical mass, establish certain models of success, and these models of success will be relevant to different situations, give the menu of options, but make it obligatory somehow. I don't think PFC and REC doors should be open to bail out for those states which are non-performers. This has also been one of the things. Because in one of the regulators' AGMs, I mentioned that if we apply the same criterion that we apply to the rating companies on NCLT when they are not paying the loan to the distribution company, most of these distribution companies, if not all, will qualify for NCLT and they will get privatized anyway. But we bail out. So we feel unhappy about it, we bail out also. I think we have political compulsions. We can't close our eyes to these requirements for the rural area particularly, also for the urban area. Yet, we should be in a position to explain, convince our people and give them the choices, but they must do something. So I think listing of the companies which are doing very well, I must tell you that 2003-4, we did not have even NTPC listed. And when we have listed, there is a successful record. So therefore, there is no reason why many of our distribution companies, even under the state dispensation, cannot qualify for that arrangement. We could have a strategic disinvestment, not with 50-50, not 49-50. We must give to the newcomer 51% so that management interference is not there. That is another option. So I think, and then we should do franchisee. We should do parallel licensing. I think parallel licensing, franchisees, the listing is still remaining with government, and strategic disinvestment. These are 4-5 areas, and also 1 megawatt can be extended to 2 megawatt in that rural electrification policy and open up totally. Generation, transmission, distribution, no license is required except for environmental control. These are some of the thoughts which can be further deliberated and discussed, but we must feel uneasy about distribution, and the present private power secretary is feeling uneasy about distribution, and he has the experience and he has the clout and he will have the conviction and he will have acceptance because he has the experience. And therefore, this is a good time that in next 2, 3, 4 years, we can change the shape of distribution. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Okay. I think this has been very involved discussion, and I think we had all the experts. We have Ajay Sankar, we have Alok Kumar, we have Rakesh Nath, Mr. Verma, and then Secretary himself was there. Anil opened the discussion with context setting. I made some remarks, but somehow the discussion tended to entire policy of the power sector rather than focusing exclusively on how do we reform distribution. वो होता है. When we had only state electricity board, then you will talk about why PLF of UP is less. They will say, I have problem in rural electricity supply, I have problem in agriculture, I have problem on this, and then therefore we restructured the electricity board into generation, transmission, distribution company. See, the issue is definitely distribution gets affected and everybody gets affected. Why distribution? Generation also gets affected if distribution is not doing well. Distribution will get affected if from generation side procurement cost, transmission cost is high. But we sometimes run the risk of these debates getting into total issues and then get confused. So the discussion to me appeared to be more being a little sympathetic to distribution companies. And those people, what can they do? Coal price became so high, procurement cost became so high, exchange price became so high, etc., etc. So that is the story. The question is, this is one. Second is, if you take the whole of electricity distribution company in the state, rather than find out the fault lines, then obviously because when I was long back, I was in the Ministry of Power in one discussion, and we talked Haryana. And the point made from the very senior level, Haryana is doing very well. So I gave 2-3 examples of Haryana towns, including Faridabad, where they are doing very bad. The point is that we have to find out among the states, of very many states, which are the areas which need improvement. I mean, one thing is very clear, the opening up entire distribution sector, a structural change of the entire distribution sector, lock, stock, and barrel, politically will be difficult, and where are the takers? So therefore, we have to, it's like we have one Delhi, we project this Delhi as a model of doing some good work, and from 50 to 60% loss, we have come down to 6, 7, 8% or something like that. So I think to that extent, there are issues of distribution, Power Secretary himself, more or less, he remained confined to what do we do on distribution now. We will see what do we do with the regulator. We will do what do we do with generating company. We will see what do we do with transmission company. With regulators, definitely we have to hold them accountable for many of the things they have not been able to do, what they can do. Another thing that came out is that one size will not fit all. There will be states where taking political issues into consideration, taking their present situation of doing well, in many places not doing well in so many places, what type of various options out of the menu of options that we can do, but we must do. Since the regulatory asset is there, therefore we will not touch distribution company institutional framework, cannot be the case. Since procurement cost is going to be high, imported coal will continue to be there for some time till coal sector improves, and therefore we will not do anything to the distribution company and make that as an excuse. That will be an unacceptable model. Because that never happens. Sort out every problem, then only I will sort out this. That is absolutely, that cannot be the case. So parallelly, we have to attack on it like we are doing. In the fuel sector, a lot of things are happening. Coal India is doing well. Captive coal blocks are doing well. Commercial mining has also started coming in. So definitely import will reduce and there will be some competition in coal. Coal, nothing was happening, something has started happening. Its impact will come in maybe 2, 3, 4 years. Procurement, we have to attack. I was looking after task force of Rajasthan for 4, 5 years. We put exchange people and something like 100 crore a month, or we started saving on procurement by only having a strategy to procure, depending on PPA long back, but also doing procurement at right time, not dispatching something from the PPA without losing, and then dispatching something from the market. So those things will start happening. We should put pressure on them. The second point is that don't definitely look at structural strength for the whole state. Look at the things where we can do something, and therefore the point that I made, also Secretary made. Secretary, I had a discussion earlier. So therefore, listing the, in fact, we should go to the extent of creating some bright spots even within state control. Listing some of the companies which are town-based, but also rural area, but more of the load is about 60-74% maybe town-based. List these companies, make various companies, list these companies as state-controlled companies so that it does not become a discussion of ideology, whether private sector or public sector. I often now say that when we had to open up generation, we did not have to privatize NTPC. When we had to open up transmission, we didn't have to privatize power grid. When we opened up airlines, we didn't privatize Air India at that time, and so on and so forth. So therefore, many times this reform of distribution company in terms of institutional reform, all reforms are reforms, like smart metering is also reform, CapEx is also reform, etc., etc. But institutional reform of distribution company is overdue. The spirit of Act has not been followed. Open access has totally been defeated by load dispatch centers, state governments, and regulatory commissions. So therefore, I think with the states, power ministry could have separate discussion rather than global discussion, means national discussion. Each state will have its own issues and challenges, and each state will have possibilities and opportunities. So regulatory commission should also be informally associated. Distribution companies, generation companies, and state energy departments, plus the power ministry. And for each state, we should work out a solution. And that solution, A, will not say that we are privatizing whole distribution, out of question. That will say, do we have some silver lining where we can do the sort of listing? C, do we have some areas where improvement is required in distribution, irrespective of other problems that exist, and therefore do the strategic investment, where 51% is taken by some process of bidding, etc. Then franchises, then parallel licenses. I think we can have a project management mode of action. Don't bring in those discussions and don't allow those discussions to be overpowered by regulator is not doing this, coal people are not doing this, Ministry of Power is not doing this. They should have their own actions. And that is the way we should move. Today's discussion, Many things have come. I think Ajay Shankar made a good set of points. I think Mr. Verma had said something about regulatory assets. Rakesh Nath brought out the issue of increasing cost. Obviously, if you don't have all coal and you want power to 50 gigawatt and we have to use imported coal, your procurement strategy of imported coal will have to be different. But those are the issues when we can discuss with them. I think we have had a number of discussions in the past. We still have discussions. And I always feel that, and I often quote these discussions as derailers of the main line. Main line, we should not lose sight in that discussion to work out a time-bound action program. Ministry of Power, the way I got an impression in a brief discussion with the Secretary of Power, they are well directed on, at this point of time, what institutional changes we can make. Now, that is not to say that other issues will be forgotten. I think Rakesh Nath is there. Let us have a regulator discussion on what are their views on distribution sector reform. And we will, in that discussion, also bring out a presentation that what is it that regulators need to do, and if they need a change in policy. So that can be another thing. Coal is also with us so far India Energy Forum is concerned. I think that is the way we should move. And the set of recommendations that we will make. There is a presentation that McKenzie also made. It is very excellent presentation, but then it gets overloaded by so many considerations that all of us, we are human beings, start sympathetic with distribution companies. We need to be sympathetic with distribution companies. I know now that private sector also runs distribution and generation. So therefore, definitely one arm is thinking of something, another arm is thinking of something else. But distribution in general is in a bad shape and consumers are suffering. It's not to say that Tata are doing very well in Delhi or Adani are doing very well in Mumbai. But in general, they are suffering. Alok obviously has run the industry as Energy Secretary of the State. Alok always will have in mind, I also run distribution company, I will have in mind some weaknesses. So therefore, these weaknesses will continue to be there. No distribution company can become perfect. No generation company can become perfect. But when I want to have interventions to improve one set of organization, I will focus on what are the weaknesses of that organization, which can be internally handled with government. Then what are the weaknesses where they need to be supported from outside interventions? I think on these lines, we will try to do something, a follow-up discussion from regulators. We follow-up discussion on fuel and also with government. Secretary did ask that we can create a set of conclusions and recommendations, and definitely he will give a due consideration to this. So with that, I thank you very much. It has been a very good participation, a quality discussion, number less, but participation has been very high level. Thanks a lot.